side, ref! Welcome back to another episode of In From The Side. I'm back with my co-host and partner in crime, Matthew Rhodes. Matt, good to see you, bud.
Thanks, bud. Good to be seen. How you doing?
Yeah, good one, man. Good. We didn't get to do this on Monday because it was a long weekend and we
Bank
took some
holiday.
time off. But we are back.
We were taking time out to wish the Pope well on his journey.
Did we? That's not what I took time out for.
In other words, we were having a couple of quiet end of week beers, so good on us.
Yeah. Okay. So we are continuing with our series of picking our Mount Rushmore of rugby players. So we've gone through fullback, left wing, right wing. Today we are picking the Mount Rushmore of outside centres, which was interesting, and I'm sure it's going to be very debatable. As always, I'm looking forward to people's comments in the comment section. Tell us what you think. Do you agree with this list? The idea of a Mount Rushmore, if you haven't seen the previous videos, it is if you have to pick 4 players to be etched on the side or carved into the side of a mountain, who would they be? And that can be for whatever reason. Were they the greatest players? Did they score the most tries? Were they your favorites when you grew up? These lists are very subjective.
Correct.
I'm sure our list will differ.
Yeah,
but it's going to be interesting.
Our lists will absolutely differ because I think you've got some homegrown heroes from yesteryear that you like to hang a hat on often, which is good because it brings up names that people maybe haven't been thinking about for a while, but rightly so have the credibility and the aura to be up on your mountain. But again, if trying to whittle down the entire list of fullbacks or wings or centers, outside center, inside center, into 4 names, you're always going to miss out.
That's impossible.
Yeah, you're always going to miss out on a couple of people. People are going to think you're mad for missing those people out and would switch out. But at the end of the day, like you say, it's subjective. Very
subjective. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Who's the first face on the side of your Mount Rushmore?
It's very difficult, I think, to look past this individual, although you will, I'm sure. But when searching into it, looking at the individuals that are available for selection at 13, none were more prominent to me than Brian O'Driscoll. So BOD, I've talked about him before in our Ireland series, and now we did a Best of the Pro era series for both Ireland and a fair few other countries, as well as the British and Irish Lions, and he featured there. Widely regarded, I think, as one of the best outside centres of all time. Brian O'Driscoll had to be the first name for me.
I didn't look past him. He's on my Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
Absolutely. No, like you say, Bod. I think a lot of people will make the argument to say he's the greatest centre of all time.
Yeah.
Again, these opinions are very subjective. I don't necessarily agree with that, but he's up there.
Yeah.
He is one of the all-time greats. 4 Lions tours, over 100 tests for Ireland. Ireland captain when they won the Grand Slam in 2009 for the first time in 61 years. He was captain of that side.
Yeah.
Also the captain of the Leinster side that won the Champions Cup that year and started that sort of legacy, that golden era of Leinster rugby. So I can't argue with you. He's just fantastic.
Look, he's a legendary figure, both at club level and international. And I think when you're thinking of Mount Rushmore, it needs to be people who have that kind of legendary status. 141 caps in total, 133 for Ireland, 8 for the Lions, 46 tries is amazing. And a career as well, spanning 15 years is really, really good. His evolution, I think, from a flashy youngster to a mature, tactical linchpin in that role, sort of balancing creative brilliance with defensive tenacity, I think was, you can see as well, he's an emotional leader. He held up the Irish, as you said, for a long time, but his rugby brain was incredibly standout. We've shown some of his tries in some of our other shows, but he just was formidable, both in attacking flair and also in defense.
I think he'll be remembered for his attack, right?
Yeah.
The stuff that he did on attack was next level. Like
Sure.
a strike runner, could hit the gap, could step off both feet, had a strong handoff. He scored a hell of a lot of tries, like you said.
Put people into space as well.
He
so
did.
Other people scored tries because of him.
Absolutely.
And his creativity. But he wasn't, as much as he was a creative and attacking player, he wasn't scared to get stuck in.
No, that's where I was going with this. He's defensively was very strong. I remember that second test, the Lions against the Springboks at Loftus. It was one of the most physical tests that I've ever seen play, and he was at the forefront. Like, he was the guy smashing into guys. I remember an incident where he just clashed heads with Donnie Rousseau, and Donnie Rousseau came off second best. Like, he was tough as nails.
He really was. We've shown this clip before. I don't know if you're going to show it again, but Donnie was just being brought in, running a line, and Brian O'Driscoll just lined him up and just ran into him as if Donnie was and is the wall that he is.
Yeah.
And Brian just ran in and they just clashed.
Took him out. Yeah.
There was a moment where you saw both of them lying on the ground, and Brian seems to kind of wear the ground and kind of get up, because it was a clash of titans. And Donnie just looked like he was seeing stars. So, again, formidable in attack, but outstanding creativity and solid in defense. I think he was the well-rounded, all-rounded player.
Can I just add, because I'm sure he'll watch this, he's a fan of the show.
Yeah.
It's the only time that I could remember that Donnie Rousseau came off second best. So, but credit to Draco for pulling that off.
Again, it's very similar to a comment we made before about how Scott Gibbs bounced Ox.
Yeah.
Osterant, rather.
The only time ever.
The only time we'd ever seen that. I went blank on the surname there. But there's a few sort of cherry moments where you think to yourself, I've never seen that before and probably will never see it again. And that was one of them. So fair play to Brian. Again, great in attack, but could stand up in defense.
No, absolutely. And when I do these lists, or whenever we do a Mount Rushmore, I always think about, you just start reading through the names and you start thinking about memories. We both watch a lot of rugby. Like, when I thought about Brian O'Driscoll, it was just highlight after highlight. Like, I could recall tries that he scored, the hat-trick scored against France in Paris in 2000, that famous try he scored for the Lions in 01, a great try scored against the Box at Newlands in 04. Like, there's very specific moments that stood out, and I think that's why he's up on my Mount Rushmore. I like it.
Nice.
Okay, we're 1 for 1.
Yeah, go on. Who's your next?
Next one, you can't have a backline without a bit of French flair.
Okay.
This player is also someone that I watched growing up in the 80s, early 90s. I put Philippe Sella up there. Again, I think if you take consensus out there in the rugby world, 9 out of 10 people will have Sella in their top 4. He played wing, he played inside on the odd occasion, but I think he was really known as an outside centre. And his combination with Denis Charvet in the 80s was special. They had a fantastic backline with Serge Blanco at the back, Saint-André, Lagisquet, all these guys going into the early 90s. But Sella, I mean, he was for a long time the most capped French player, the first player to reach 100 caps.
Yeah.
But he was just one of those magical players. He used to always run with the ball in 2 hands. So he was always looking for opportunities that if he didn't make the gap, he would always offload to a player inside or outside of him. He made his wings outside of him look really, really good. So maybe not as known for scoring tries, but as an attacker, he was absolutely brilliant. And he was a small guy. He wasn't big, but very physical. There was a couple of times, and hopefully I'll find the clips and show it, where he would just bust through a tackle. Like, 2 guys would be on him, and he'll break through. Like, he just had that tenacity that you spoke about. But for me, it had to be Sella.
Great career, 13 years, 1982 to 95, 3 World Cups, runner-up in the 87 World Cup as well. Very, very technical. But I think, as you say, he ran with the ball in 2 hands, which is just grassroots rugby.
Yeah.
It's just fundamental, run with the ball in 2 hands to give yourself options. So not maybe the most flashy player out there. And maybe that's the reason why I didn't go with him in mind. So I don't have him up on my team. But again,
I'm surprised with that.
Yeah, there was a lot of noise around him, and rightly so, because he has every right to be up there. He's one of the best, and so
he was great.
He was definitely on my short list of candidates. But for me, again, maybe, and again, this is subjective, but maybe the style in its simplicity lacked the creative flair that I think I'm looking for in my 13. And so as much as he put other people into space and he ran in, again, he wasn't someone on my list of all-time greats growing up.
It's interesting that you say that, and I'm not refuting that, because a lot of people always leave comments in the comment section saying, oh, but how can you forget about this person? But it's like, these guys played 30, 40 years ago, and you can't remember all the detail. Like, I remember him as a very creative, flashy player.
Yeah.
You don't remember him that way. So it's purely, what we saw and what we could recall from these players. So who did make your Mount Rushmore?
So instead, I went with someone else. And again, we watched, and this is maybe to the point, we watched a lot more rugby between South Africa, New Zealand, Australia. I was prone maybe to watching more Southern Hemisphere. And
we were exposed to it a lot more.
A lot more.
Yeah.
And the 5 nations of the time and maybe 6 nations, I'd watch, but maybe not as intensely. And so someone like Philippe Silla, I didn't understand or didn't sort of have an appreciation of how good he was in the context of his time. And so looking back on his reels now and doing the research, yeah, cool. Great player, rightly so. And all the noise, as I say, around him is valid, but didn't really have much of a weight in my heart, if that makes any sense, right? On the other side, someone who did and who I watched for many years and I always enjoyed watching, I always enjoyed his style and the way he played, was Sterling Mortlock. So Sterling gets a shout at my Mount Rushmore, 80 caps, 489 points. And I know that a lot of people said that was weighted because of his kicking ability, but 29 tries still is...
No, he was a great try scorer.
Mate, for a centre, 29 tries is outstanding.
Yeah.
So...
A couple of them were on the wing, though.
Yeah.
But in his later career,
Yeah.
he did cement that 13th position.
Wallabies captain 06 and 07, a career spanning 9 years as well. He was a stalwart of that sort of Wallabies team in and around that period. And he just stood up in that role, I think. And he always seemed to be, for me, someone who just exuded excellence in what he did. He was very, very hard runner. It was very hard to bring down. Played with, a keen kind of steel about him. And as I say, he had the technical nous, both kicking out of hand, but also off the deck, that just made him, in my eyes at least, someone who was a very complete player once again.
Yeah, no, he was. He was on my short list. I definitely had him penciled in and highlighted him in amber because he didn't make the green list. But he was up there. He was one of the best centers, I think, in the professional era.
Yeah.
Mortlock probably with... I know I picked Adam Ashley Cooper in our all-time team, which is not a bad shout. But I thought about it afterwards, and I was like, Mortlock and Dan Herbert were probably the two standout outside centers. Jason Little, maybe. He struggled with injury, but... I think for the Aussies, he's probably top of the list. I can't fault you. The one memory that I have of Mortlock was, like you said, direct running, straight running.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't go sideways. He didn't try and jinx. He hit the line hard and straight. And 9 times out of 10, he broke through the tackle. And he was really good. I like that.
I think he was a really great blend of power, speed, aggression, and precision. So, as you say, he ran fantastic lines, but he ran straight and he ran hard, and he'd run through. AAC actually was in my considerations, right? So, Adam Ashley Cooper, I really loved him as a player. And for me, from the Aussie component at least, for my Mount Rushmore, it came down to those two. Adam Ashley Cooper, 121 caps, 40 were at outside centre. So, in its own right, his role at outside centre was decent, right? He obviously played fullback, he played wing, but 39 tries. Sure, some of them are coming in other positions. But again, he played in 2 World Cups, runner-up in 1. He won the Rugby Championship in 2011, 2015. He was also Super Rugby champion with the Waratahs. Highly versatile, consistent, clinical try scorer. I just love the way that AAC played. He played with flair, he was good on the high ball, he was super quick, and so I really liked his style. But when it came down to it, and I had both of them up against each other, Sterling Mortlock just pipped it for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I went Selah, you went Mortlock?
Yeah.
Okay, who's the third face on the side of your Mount Rushmore?
Again, come back to the point of the rugby that I watched, and I wouldn't say heroes, but the people that stood out in my mind, doing my research, thinking back on the games that I've watched, and the people that stood out as the out-and-out outside centers who owned that position, ran that position, and were just kings in their own right, for me at least. I had to look at the Kiwi component. And when I was growing up, 1995, Frank Bunce was like, he was just everything. and his partnership with Walter Little was just outstanding. And I had him in contention and consideration. I was looking at him and a few others. But for me, the outstanding New Zealand contribution at 13 has to be Conrad Smith.
Okay.
And so Conrad Smith gets my third nod, 94 caps, 26 tries. He had a win rate of 90%. And a career that obviously spanned 11 years. Rugby World Cup winner 2011 and 15. Rugby Championship winner 7 times. Lions Series winner in 05. Multiple Grand Slams. The guy was a legend in the Kiwi jersey, but he was also a legend at the Hurricanes.
Yeah, Super Rugby in 2016.
Yeah. He just, and again, in the same kind of vein as Sterling Mortlock, who and also Brian O'Driscoll, he was for my mind at least, a thinking 13. He was strategic. He maybe wasn't the most flash, but strong runner, great lines, ran hard to bring down, excellent in defense, would run often with the ball in 2 hands, like you said with Philippe Sella. And a lot of the time, as much as he got plenty of meat pies himself, he would put other people into space and they would score tries as a consequence. So, he was just, again, the all-round player, which is a bit of a theme of what I've gone for this week. And again, defensively, he stood up. He made some big tackles. And so, again, whether it was creative flair, running hard, breaking the gain lines and bringing other people in, or just being a rock and standing up and making sure he was, a defensive wall, I think he just embodied everything that a 13 is.
No, he was a great player. And those combinations with first Luke McAllister and then Ma'au Nonu over the years, I mean, especially the one with Nonu, probably the best centre combination for many years that we saw on the planet. Just quickly need to correct myself, Matt. I said the Hurricanes won Super Rugby with him in 2016. He retired in 2015. So I just needed to correct myself. He never won Super Rugby.
Did he not?
But before someone else calls me out. But he played over 100 games for the Hurricanes and will obviously go down as a Wellington legend. But
100%.
I agree with you. On your list from the 3 names that you've given, he's probably the most comparable to like a Philippe Sella.
Okay.
A smaller player in stature, more creative, ran with the ball in 2 hands, looked for space, looked for offloading opportunities. I can definitely see similarities there. But, I mean, Smith's up there. I had Buns, Aidumaga as part of my shortlist. They all made my shortlist, so that's how good they were.
I think for him, you can't understate the brilliance of his rugby IQ.
He was fantastic.
And his game reading ability. Like, I know that he's an academic out of rugby. I think he's a qualified lawyer, and so you don't become a lawyer by being an idiot. And so he's got some grey matter in between the ears. But you saw that in his tactical nous and his reading of the game whenever he was on the field. Again, the defensive consistency was always apparent, but his unselfish play, he would make good decisions at the right times always. And for me, he was a standout figure.
No, absolutely. It's interesting because you brought a Australian component and a New Zealand component into your selection. I've only got one Southern Hemisphere player in my Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
The third player that I went up on my list, we spoke about him when we spoke about England and the British Lions. Again, I just grew up watching this guy and marvel at what he could do in the midfield, and it's Jeremy Guscott.
Oh, wow.
Loved him. I know he played inside and outside. I've been rightly corrected by a lot of people on the channel saying, Guscott was an outside centre. He just didn't play with 13 on his back. But that combination with Carling, they won 3 Grand Slams in the early 90s. That, at the time, was the greatest centre combination on the planet. Scored a lot of tries, made a lot of tries for the players outside of him. Again, he's one of those players that makes outside backs better than they were. Gave the ball a lot to Underwood on the wing, actually both Underwoods. He had all-round skills, like his kicking game. We spoke about it. I hate to bring it up again, but that drop against the box wasn't the only time. He won the series pretty much for the Lions in 89 against Australia by kicking a little grubber and then scoring from that. He did a great chip and chase against Northern Transvaal on that Lions series. Like he had strings to, I always get this wrong, strings to his bow.
Yep.
Like he had a complete skill set. And I think, again, for a smaller centre, he was deceptively good on defense. I can't remember him ever being found out for being a poor defender. He wasn't known for being a poor defender, so he made his tackles. But I think it's on attack and his game reading ability and his strategic thinking on the field that for me just put him up on that pedestal. Like, I can't have a Mount Rushmore without Gus Scott. He's the greatest English centre I've ever seen play.
And that's fair enough. I won't push back on that because obviously he's such a great... Difficult for me because I picked Scott Gibbs as my player over Gus Scott in our Lions series, and it was part of my considerations this time around as well, in that he was on my shortlist, and I looked at it and I was like, well, I didn't pick him for the player of the series then, or to be the centre. I went with Scott Gibbs, and I didn't pick Scott Gibbs for this particular series either, and yet he was on my consideration. So with that in mind, I kind of withdrew into myself to consider the people that had a profound impact on me. And as much as I liked Gus Scott, and his name is synonymous with, we talked about it, the Lions and the kind of stature of the Lions.
Yeah.
And the player that he was for England, which was, he is a legend in his own right. He just didn't have that sort of sway for me personally. And so that's why I looked elsewhere.
No, but I mean, that's what these lists are. Who are your personal heroes? Who are the people that made the biggest impression on you? And for me, it was just up there. Again, it goes back to the video collection that my dad had. He had like videos of Six Nations highlights, and Gus got featured very, very prominent in those videos when I was a lighty, and so he made a big impression on me from a young age.
Yeah, and again, the name was synonymous with excellence in England and excellence with the Lions when I was growing up. So it's not like I'm void of that knowledge, but for me, it just, you've got to pick four.
Yeah, but as a South African, it does pain me to pick an Englishman ahead of someone like Jacques Fourie or, Ryk van Schoor or some of those old players. It was very difficult. But yeah, he made my Mount Rushmore.
Nice.
Okay, we are almost through our Mount Rushmore. Matt, there's space for one more player, all-time greatest 13 that you've seen play. Who goes up?
Dude, this was so hard, because, there's so many great players. We talked about Adam Ashley Cooper being in my considerations before, Frank Bunce previously. Frank Bunce, 59 appearances for New Zealand. Jonathan Davies for Wales. Unbelievable player. Legend.
Johnny Fox, what a legend.
His running ability, running straight lines, strong, hard in the tackle. His fend.
He had one of the best handoffs. I was just about to say that. Like
fend.
In the face. It was brilliant.
Two people stand out with the fend for me. Him and Corey Jane. Corey Jane had an amazing fend, but on the wing. Jonathan Davies, the fend was just sensational. For France, Yannick Josian, I think, also deserved a mention. 73 tries, 73 caps, 20 tries. The trophy cabinet for that guy. Five nations, 3 European Cups, 3 top 14. He's a physical specimen as well. 6'4", 106 kgs, 108 kgs rather. You mentioned Philippe Silla. He was in my considerations. And then the South Africans, Andre Snyman. Was he inside or outside centre?
One of my all-time favorite players.
Andre Snyman.
What a player.
Henny LaRue as well. Just amazing. And really pulled at my heartstrings because Andre Snyman, the way that he was, just stood out for me. You mentioned Jason Little, Brian Lima for Samoa as well. Great.
That was good.
Gary Ringrose, Manu Tuilagi, even Gail Fiku, I think having a look at, because I had him in my all-time French team. But for me, it came down to two people that I had, and really pulling at the heartstrings. One was Lukanya Am, so 2 World Cups, top-tier handler, intercept specialist, fast, excellent at the breakdown too, which I think he's overlooked for a lot of the time. Really intelligent player, and he's a game-reading maestro. I think he's gone off a bit recently, which is maybe what pushed him out of my selection, but it was really hard for me because I've loved Lukhanyo. He's a Sharks boy. That's my team. And then he's helped us to win 2 World Cups. That pass to Mapimpi to score the try, just that nonchalant flick over, it'll just remain as just one of the moments in my career, in my rugby watching experience as being a standout. So for me, it was really hard to leave him out of that last spot. But when it came down to it, there was one person's name that kind of stood out for me, and that was Jacques Fourie. You mentioned Jacques before. Jacques Fourie, 72 caps, 32 tries, 10 years as a Springbok. He won the 2007 World Cup, Tri-Nation champion 2004 and 2009. He won the British and Irish Lions series in 2009. Yeah, Super Rugby finalist. Played with the Cats, the Lions, the Stormers. Like, boy, was sensational. But for me, I think a lot of the stuff around Jacques was overshadowed by maybe a few more high-profile teammates around him, and yet he was a devastating performer in his own right. So he had a deadly strike rate. As I say, 32 tries from 72 tests is elite.
For a centre, that's really good. That's really good.
Is elite. And again, his partnership with Jean de Villiers, arguably the most balanced and lethal. They were outstanding together. The 2009 try against the Lions, I think it was voted as the try of the year.
Try of the year.
He ran over three people, scored in the corner. I just loved the way that he played. He reminded me of a thoroughbred running in a race. Upright running, great style, strong, rangy. And for me, he was just... he was one of the standouts in my experience of watching rugby. He will always remain as one of my favorites, one of my greats. So couldn't leave him off. Also defensively, he was a quiet leader in the line. So really missed any tackles, covered the inside channel really, really well. And he could shift between 13 and wing often as well. So that versatility. So for me, as I say, he would stand out, and he's my last pick.
No, love it. You didn't pick the South African, I would have, but I love the fact that you've got a Safa in there with your Australian and New Zealand guys and on your Mount Rushmore. I love Jacques Fourie. I think he's an absolute legend. I'm happy that you picked him. I'm happy that he's up there. I think between the two Mount Rushmores that we pick, I'm glad he's on one. You're right. Defensively, he was really good. And I think that's why he's a defensive coach now at the Lions, because he was known. Speak to any player that he played with, Banner, Jean de Villiers, all those guys, they will say that Mossi was the organizer in the back line. He was like organizing the defensive structures, and he was the guy that read the game. So not just an attacking weapon, but strategically could read the game. My first memory of Jacques Fourie was at school. So we played against Monument. He went to Monument. I was a matric. He was standard 9. He played fullback. I didn't play first team. I won't claim that I did, but I just remember this lanky, like skinny guy at fullback, just tearing us to shreds. We lost by a record score. So he made an impression on me from a young age. Always in a struggling Lions team in the mid 2000s, he was like the one shining light, the one guy that always stood out, and you knew he was going to be part of Jake White's team. So love it.
Yeah, man. And again, for me, it came down to either him or Lukhanyo Am. And so, really tough. Jesse Creel was another one that I had.
Jesse's up there, mate. I would pick Jesse ahead of Lukhanyo, to be honest.
Jesse, elite defender, smart passer, kicker. 2 Rugby World Cups as well. There was Tana Umaga that I was thinking of at one point. I've left him out. A lot of the Kiwi boys are going to be screaming at me for that, for sure. As I said, I had Frank Bunsen in my considerations, and I went Conrad Smith instead. But for me, when it came down to my heartstrings, it was Lukhanyo, it was Jacques, and I just remember all those magical experiences that particular Springbok team gave to me over that period that he played. And again, that partnership with Jean de Villiers was, a thing of beauty. So he goes up on my wall, on my Mount Rushmore.
No, I love it. It's interesting. Maybe it's biased and it's just an education thing. But when I looked at this list, there were so many South Africans that sprung up. Japie Mulder, Lukhanyo Am, Andre Snyman, from the older eras, Mannetjies Roux, John Gainsford, Ryk van Schoor, Chol Lategan, Japie Krige. You won't know these guys, Matt, but they're all legends. They're all legends in the game, and my dad would tell you, he'll sit for hours and tell you about them. Before I get to my final pick, just some other guys that I looked at. From New Zealand, Graham Thorne, the great Graham Thorne, toured here in the 70s and in South Africa. Bruce Robertson, another All Black in the 70s, who I thought before Buns, he was like the legend outside centre for New Zealand. Really like Bruce Robertson. Scott Hastings, who played for Scotland. The lesser known Hastings brother. Then in the 50s, there was a guy who played for England and played for the Lions, Jeff Butterfield. Devastating runner, great stepper. I had Will Greenwood in there. I had Jason Little. I had Mortlock, Ashley Cooper, Frank Bunce, all these guys. All of these players.
Legendary in their own right.
But Matt, not one of them holds a candle to the great Doring van Dispatch, Donnie Gerber. So Donnie Gerber, his nickname was the Doring van Dispatch, the Thorn from Dispatch. I know I'm biased because I'm a bit of a fanboy.
Yeah.
But even if I take my bias out of it, objectively, I think he's one of the top 2-3 Springboks of all time, still, to this day. The stuff that he achieved on the field in an era where South Africa didn't play Test rugby, he only played 24 Tests over 13 seasons. That's all he could play. And he was one of the regulars that always got picked. He didn't really get an opportunity all that often, which is sad. He's someone that could have played 100 Tests, and he should have played 100 Tests if it wasn't for sporting boycotts. You're talking about strike rate of Jacques Fourie. He scored 19 tries in 24 Tests.
Yeah, that's decent.
That's decent.
For a centre.
For a centre, and I think it's only Mapimpi that's got a better, or maybe Kurtley Arendse, but both wingers that have got a better strike rate. This guy in the midfield was superb.
Yeah.
And I'm going to show some of his greatest tries. And people out there can make up their own minds, because I'm sure you ask a South African, 9 out of 10 will agree with me and say, not only is he on Mount Rushmore, he probably needs his own mountain. But for the folks that live here in the UK that didn't see him play in the 80s, or maybe know very little of him, or only saw him in 92 when we came back into international rugby, he was way past his best already, but he scored 4 tries in 5 Tests that year. He scored some fantastic tries. There's a very famous one he scored against Ireland in 1981, where 2 Irish defenders just ran into each other because he just stepped both ways and they didn't know where he was going, and they just ran into each other and he scored under the post. So it's a thing of beauty. I'll show it. I'll also share the link to the tribute we did, Matt. You have to go and watch it.
I will do.
It's, he's a personal favorite, but objectively, I think he's the greatest centre that's ever played the game.
And I'm not surprised by your selection, because I've heard you talk about him so many times.
I know I do.
But you're not the only one. The amount of times that I've seen other South Africans incorporate him in every kind of elite conversation around rugby. I think I'm right in saying he was on a podcast recently with Rassie Erasmus.
Yes,
anyway.
he was. Yeah.
So if you guys are keen, go and take a look at that one. You'll probably never watch our rugby again.
What's the point?
What's the point? 2 of the greatest of all time talking to each other. Good luck to you. Us two. No, meaning Rassie and Donnie Gerber. But he is, his lore, his legendary status is known far and wide. Not only within South African spheres, but I think, as you say, to rugby purists who know the game, they know him to be one of the all-time legends of the sport. He didn't feature on my Mount Rushmore because, unfortunately, I haven't done my due diligence to go and look at how good he was in his own right. And I didn't get the opportunity growing up to see enough of him.
Yeah, but I think that's
to form an opinion.
That's the thing, mate. I mean, if you grew up in Zim, you didn't have access to the footage we had access to. I mean, South Africa never played international rugby. All we had was the Currie Cup. But when he played Test rugby, he was sublime. Scored a great hat-trick against England at Ellis Park in 84. Scored he scored 2 tries against the All Blacks in our first Test back from isolation in 92 at the age of 34. He was still at the top of his game. He played first-class rugby into his 40s. Like until the year 2000, he played a first-class game for the 95 Springboks, although he wasn't part of the squad, but he did make an appearance and again scored a try. So, and for many, many years, he held the South African first-class try-scoring record. I think he scored 158 tries in first-class rugby over 15, 16 seasons. Like he was a freak of nature. I was lucky enough to meet him. And just a quick story: if it wasn't for him, this channel wouldn't exist.
So cheers, mate.
So he had a big role to play in Real Rugby actually existing as a channel. I met him in 2011, and he told me he went down to Wellington for the World Cup in New Zealand, and wherever he went, like people recognized him. Still, from that 81 tour, they remember him from 1981, 30 years later. Even in New Zealand, that's how famous he was. And he showed me a DVD and said, this is just something someone made of my career. And I very arrogantly said, Donnie, I will make you a better tribute than anyone has ever made. Didn't have a PC, didn't have any footage, but it sort of set me on a path to go and find footage, which I now have tons of. and started the channel from there. So I actually owe him, but that's not why I chose him. Like, honestly, for the folks out there, I'll put a link to his tribute. I know I go on about it a lot, and I will shut up at some point, Matt, until the camera runs out. But no, he was great. He's one of those guys that just, you watch his highlights and you sit with a smile on your face. And he's humble about it. He's not arrogant. If you talk to him, he's like, yeah, you know, I had an opportunity to do something. He came from nothing. He had nothing growing up. And famously, I don't know how many people know this, he got an opportunity to go and play rugby league in England. And he was on his way to the airport, ready to get on a plane, come and join Rob Lowe and Ray Mords in the UK. And he literally said to his wife, I can't do this. I can't go. And she said, why? And he said, what if South Africa plays Test rugby again? I would trade all that money and all that fame setting us up for life for one more opportunity to play for the Springboks. And I think that's why he's up there. Like, for him, there was nothing more important than playing in the green and gold and doing the things that he did and scoring the types of tries that he did. For me, it's not even an argument. But I'll let the folks out there tell me if they agree or not. If you're South African, I'm guaranteed that you're going to agree. If you're not, you'll probably have something to say and say, well, what did this guy do? But I think if he played in the pro era, he would have been just as dangerous. So I'm going to shut up.
No, it sounds like it. It sounds like he's well worth his spot on your Mount Rushmore. But there we have it. Both of us choosing our four, the guys that stood out for us and that had a massive impact on who we enjoyed watching at centre, outside centre. We move next week to the inside centre role, which is also going to be really interesting, and it's very difficult because there's so many great inside centres. And when you think about, obviously, the series that we did before, picking the best pro era teams of the countries that we did, it was hard enough then to look at the best centres for Australia or the best centres for South Africa. Now we're looking at the best across the entire group of nations that have ever played and across the entire history of rugby.
Yeah.
It makes it difficult.
It does make it difficult.
Yeah.
But it is a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. and we get to talk about some great players. We're obviously going to take a bit of stick, I'm sure, for some of the mentions. Bring them, keep them coming. The algorithm loves it.
Yeah, give us your feedback. Tell us who you would have put up on your Mount Rushmore of outside centres. We're going to do this again, as Matt said, next week.
Yeah.
We will do inside centre. In the meantime, give us a like and a subscribe. Click the little notification button at the bottom of the video to get notified of all our videos that go up every single week. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We'll love hearing from you and getting your feedback. Thank you for all the support. We'll see you again next week.
Cheers.